Obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't actually do a video for all of us wonderful geeks about all of this stuff. So, that's what this is. So, let's start off with an amazing piece of technology right here. This is a Linksys NAS by Cisco Systems. 120 gigabytes. I know you guys are in awe of the storage capacity of this modern marvel. Okay, moving along. So, these are HP C3000 blade centers. They are 8 bay, and they have 4 networking slots, ports, whatever you want to call it, on the back. I forget the technical term that HP calls them. But they're these suckers, which I will go over in a bit. So I have 3 of the C3000s. These are, again, 8 bays. I have 3 of the C7000s, which are 16 bay. They're not here, though, thankfully. They're somewhere else in storage right now. This is a little amazing thing, which I will get to last. I actually want to do a separate little video on that, because I want it to stand alone. These are 2 bad HP DL580s. Those are G7s. And again, those are bad. They're broken and busted up. Those are 2 good HP DL580 G7s. And that's the big girl. We'll get to her in a bit. So, for the blade centers, we'll loop back to this. You have blades. Lots of blades. This is not all the blades I have. This is probably half of them. So, all of these are Intel blades here. These are Nehalem, Westmere Nehalem blades. Variable, they're all dual socket, different amounts of RAM. Some of them have 4 per CPU. So 8 DIMMs slots per system. Some of them, like these, is 12 DIMMs per, I think. I'd have to pull one down just to double verify that. This top one, though, is an interesting one. I'm not going to pull it down now because I'm only doing this with one hand. It's actually a workstation blade, so there's actually a slot for graphics cards that can go in there, and then they connect to the mezzanine cards in this one, which is fun. I have yet to play around with that one, though. These are also Intel blades right here. These are Generation 8, though, so these are all Sandy Bridge. They used to have 2690s in them, but they don't have anything in right now. Right now, they're just the raw blades. These are AMD blades, so Opteron 6172s, and then we have 6272. We have 2 of those, and then 3 of the 6176s. And I think these have 12 RAM slots apiece. Maybe more than that. Again, I'd have to go back and check. So these are the Ethernet pass-through. So in the blade chassis, at least in these, you have a hard 1 gig link between any blade and these top 2 slots. So you slide one of these in, and these directly map to these. There's 16 ports here. And you can go in and configure the whole networking and do VLANs and all that fun stuff inside the center if you want, and you have a different arrangement of blades and how you want them to work. So these are just Ethernet pass-throughs, nothing really special about them. But you can still map them however you want. Then we have fiber channel. So these right here, all of those are HP 4 gig fiber channel. Again, networking cards, whatever you want to call them. Then, see, those 4. This is a Brocade 4 gig SAN, and then 2 Brocade 8 gig SANs. Then we have 2 of the HP 10 gig Flex Fabric. This stuff is amazing. I love it. I never really got to play with it to its fullest, but super cool stuff. And then we have, the rest of these are Cisco's, so I don't know all the details of all of them. If you really wanted to know, you could look it up. Let's see if we can pull up some part numbers here. Focus! Focus! Okay. 3020. Of course, I don't know. Oh, wait, there it is. 3120XS, and then 3120GS. And then these are the big puppies. These are the Cisco B22HPs. Good Cisco switches. And those are all, like, actual Cisco switches. You log in just like you would on any other Cisco switch, and you can configure it. If you have scripts written to work on Cisco gear, it will work on those. Let's see. Anything else interesting? So I used this for a bit. Good stuff. It's a good switch. Thank you, Joe. You're not getting it back. This is fiber QSFP 40 gig. Well, it's QSFP. I used it for 40 gig InfiniBand, which is what these switches are. I have two of these. And these are just DACs. QSFP DACs. An old Cisco 2950. A Netgear ProSave. You can see the number, so I'm not going to say it. That switch, which is right there, I'm not going to say it. And then a nice Linksys, because why not? Okay, so this is the XNC module. This is a backup XNC module to the big girl. This is an HP DL980 G7. What that means is it is effectively two of those 580s bolted together with that thing in the middle. So the Intel Xeons have QPI links to help them communicate between different processors. Now, the processors that this uses have 4 QPI links. Now, in a server like this, that means that every CPU can map to every other CPU because you have enough. 4 processors, 4 QPI links. So each processor has a link to every processor. So then you get into a situation like this, and you're like, well, hold on a second. I now have 8 of them. I have 4 processors in the top tray. Let me turn on this light so I can get a little bit more light. I have 4 processors in the top tray. I have 4 processors in the bottom tray. But how do these work together? Well, that's the black magic of this. So this is a massive FPGA that effectively acts as an interlink between the QPI links on these processors. So all the processors will link in one tray with each other. So this process, let's say processor 1. Or wait, did I get that right? No, sorry. That's processor... Oh, it doesn't matter. Let's say this is processor 1. It's not, but I forget what it is. So this processor can map 1 QPI link, 2 QPI link, 3 QPI link, 4 QPI link. And then that will then step over to here, because every single one of these has a link to that on the top tray, and every CPU in the bottom tray has a link to that. So this acts as an interconnect between all the processors together. So in a single tray, they're one jump away from each other. In these trays, it's one hop to this, one hop to the CPU, so 2 links away. So there is some I/O loss, but it's not much. Now, there is a management port there, and on the big one you can see all those wires, and that pattern that they connect in, which you see here, is very specific. But this management port allows this to do a secondary mode. From what I've gathered, from reading the documentation and talking with a few people who have had access to these in production, is this server has 2 modes. It has mode 1, which is the mode that it has as default, where all the processes are running all the time with each other. So 8 sockets running together in harmony. The second mode is when this gets modified, and I think the cabling gets switched around as well. Puts the system into high availability mode. So you have this and this directly mirroring each other. So when you have a calculation being done here, it's also being done here. The reason being, if one of these for any reason blows out, the system stays up and running because high availability. Everything is running on both of them at the same time. The other thing that HP did with these, and I'm going to see if I can pop this out while I'm talking. There. Oh, okay, so this is in the way, but hey, that gives us a look. So upper tray, hey, this was processor 1, I was right. So you see all of these numbers here. So each processor has 2 memory cartridges that are mapped to it in what HP calls hemispheric mode. Now, the DLs, I believe, have hemispheric mode as an option, but I think it's a hard requirement here. Again, I could be wrong. I've had this up and running, but getting a lot of the specific documentation is hard because this server originally cost well over $250,000. So with that kind of money, you pick up the phone and you call HP when you have a problem. You don't necessarily need to diagnose everything yourself. So a lot of the information on this server and kind of troubleshooting, they do have a troubleshooting document they released, is kind of held up within HP because they never needed to release it, and now that this is, I think if it's not end of life, it's happened very soon, they don't care to release it, because why would they? And this is a gripe that I have with HP Enterprise, is they don't want to release firmware, all the external firmware, God, my brain is out. They don't want to release all the older firmware for older systems that are EOL. Now, in this case, and in the case of these, that's kind of a touchy subject, because both of these servers are Generation 7. Generation 7 spanned two separate Xeon lines of processors. You have Westmere's and you have Nehalem's. So your E-series and your X-series and your L-series Xeons, which, let me go into the CPU tray bin. Let me see if I can find one that I can get a right angle at to get visible. There. So this is an L5630. So this is obviously not the same as one of those. These are the E7 4870 Xeons. I think that's what these are. Let me double check. Let me get a better angle. Yes. Now, these servers, let me put this back in. These servers were shipped with both configurations. Now, obviously, the socket is different. So how does that happen? Well, this front part here that pulls out, which you saw me pull this one out. Let me slide. There. I'm not going to pull the whole thing out. There's a motherboard that runs beneath this. Now, this one is different because there's also another board underneath it that is an interconnect board to connect to that. But roughly, the layout of this board and this board is the same as these, except with the extra bits so that they can talk to another one. There's a motherboard underneath here, and then that connects in with the motherboard in the back, which is right here, and on these is back here. Now, you can buy the tray itself, pull the tray out. Like this one right here is E7s, but let's say this is the older, let's say this had L5630s in it. You could buy a whole nother one of these, pull this out, go into your server room, pull this out, then take the next one and slide it in, and you would think, hey, the Nehalem series Xeons are supported on this box. When I slide the new motherboard in with the new processors and the new RAM, this box should work great. Right? Wrong. Because the firmware on the motherboard is different. Not the processor board, the motherboard. So, HP never released that. So, if you have an older one of these series that use the older processors and you want to upgrade it, you can't, because you can't get the firmware to flash it. Now, if you had an HP contract, they probably had some additional payment that you could make that then they would come out and they would flash it for you. But that firmware never made it out into the wild. And because, well, I shouldn't say and, but because of that, a lot of these boxes are being sold, for instance, on reseller places. Like you see a lot of these on eBay that list that they're, you know, they come with L series or E series or X series Xeons, but they're E7 supported chassis, so you can slide and, you know, new processors in and get life. That's actually not true, because the firmware on the boards is very specific. So that's kind of a catch-22 if you're looking to buy these. You need to make sure that the system you're getting actually has the proper firmware on the back for the processes that are in it. I know some people who have bought these secondhand, and the place they bought them from thought they were going to do a clever, and they pulled the older X series out, threw some E7s in a tray in, and shipped it out the door, never trying to turn the thing on to find out that, oops, it won't work. Same thing applies to this box, except a little different. So with this one, HP did release the firmware. If you bought this with the X series Xeons in it, you had 8 of the 8-core, 16-thread, let's say X76, whatever it was, in here. HP released the firmware. It was an ISO that you would download, that when you had your X series processors in, you would boot from that. It would then flash and update all the firmware on the motherboard and the XNC module, because both of these have to be updated. And then when that happened, you could take these out, then slide your new ones in, and then reboot, and you'd be good. However, when HP and HPE did their little split thing, that ISO went behind a paywall. So if you have this, you have to have a support contract to get the ISO. Now, because of how old this is, when I contacted HP to say, hey, I would like to get that ISO so I can update my box, because when I got this, it originally had the X7 series Xeons in it, and I had a tray of the E7s that I wanted to use. And I contacted HP, and they was like, well, you would need a support contract to get that. I said, okay, great. Well, I'm an open source developer. I don't have much money. How much is that going to cost me? Well, we're not going to sell you the support contract because it's an end-of-life product that we're not going to be supporting going forward. Okay, so then how do I get the firmware? Well, you need a support contract. Okay, so I need the firmware. In order to get the firmware, I need a support contract. You won't sell me a support contract because it's end of life. So then how do I get the firmware? I have to have a support contract. So they didn't quite understand the loop that we were caught in. Excuse my phone. So yeah, eventually, let's just say this problem resolved itself. That's all I'm going to say about that. And this is now running all of the Xeons. So this has 8 of these suckers in it. So these are 10-core 20-thread Intel Xeons 4870s. Base clock is 2.4. Boost clock is 2.7. And at least in what I've tested, these pretty much boost all the time. I've never had them that I've noticed not boost. And I've got a couple of them, if you can see there. Got a couple extras. And then, of course, well, I got 8 more there, and 8 more there, and a couple more back in there somewhere. Let's see what other goodies. Hard drives. A bunch of HP hard drives, because, yeah. These are... Focus. These are the HP branded fuzzy drives. It's a high-tech thing that they came out with for a while, since, again, they don't focus because they're fuzzy drives. It's high-tech. High-tech. Nothing else in there. I think my RAM is all over here. Yeah, so this is some of the RAM. It's sad when this is your RAM storage. I do, but as you see, I have made an attempt to actually store RAM properly. I don't have enough of those trays. Anybody want to donate some? Let me not cover the lens with my finger. And then those are more memory cartridges for the HP. More memory cartridges for the HP. You get the point. So, yeah. That is all the fun. And now I'll do a separate one for that.